Tonight, as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is preparing for what could be an explosive confirmation hearing to be the nation's next health secretary, his own cousin is publicly urging lawmakers to reject him. It's a scathing letter to senators today that was sent by Kaitlan Kennedy, who is JFK's daughter, detailing why she says RFK Jr. is not only woefully unqualified, but also dangerous. Kaitlan Kennedy, who has served as the ambassador to Japan and to Australia, and rarely makes waves publicly in this manner, punctuated her letter by reading it out loud for these senators and for the country to hear it in her own voice.
I've known Bobby my whole life. We grew up together. It's no surprise that he keeps birds of prey as pets, because Bobby himself is a predator. I watch his younger brothers and cousins follow him down the path of drug addiction. His basement, his garage, his dorm room were always the center of the action, where drugs were available, and he enjoyed showing off how he put baby chickens and mice in a blender to feed to his hawks. It was often a perverse scene of despair and violence. Bobby was able to pull himself out of illness and disease. I admire the discipline that took and the continuing commitment it requires. But siblings and cousins who Bobby encouraged down the path of substance abuse suffered addiction, illness, and death, while Bobby has gone on to misrepresent, lie, and cheat his way through life. Today, while he may encourage a younger generation to attend AA meetings, Bobby is addicted to attention and power. Bobby preys on the desperation of parents of sick children, vaccinating his own kids while building a following hypocritically discouraging other parents from vaccinating theirs.
My political sources are here at the table with me. Maria Cardona, I mean, that's a searing indictment. And she kind of says, you know, I don't often come out and say things like this because of my family and because I don't want to be talking about them. But she felt the need to do this hours before he goes up on the Hill tomorrow morning.
It's scathing, and it is, when you hear it, it is very jarring. And I think that if Democrats do their job well, they could turn that into a massive movement to put phone calls into senators to keep him from being confirmed, because really that's the only way to do it. And I think that's exactly what they have to do. You know, looking at what HHS does and looking at what RFK Jr. has said and done in the past that makes him dangerous for this position, you have a lot of constituencies that could be motivated and activated to put those calls into those senators. You have moms. I mean, clearly there's a lot more mothers and families who vaccinate their children than don't. They can be motivated. You have a lot of older people. There's millions of older Americans who will be affected by the lack of qualifications of somebody like RFK Jr., people who depend on Medicaid, Medicare, all of the medications that he's going to be in charge of.
Yeah.
And then families who depend on safe food. All of us depend on that, right? So I think it's going to depend on how Democrats make sure that not just what she has said goes viral, but that all of the constituencies that will be affected by his lack of qualifications, get them to make those phone calls.
Yeah, and she was saying not only is he unqualified, she was really also just talking about his character and going after it in that way from a personal experience perspective.
Yeah, this kind of feels like a Hail Mary on her part. It seems like she sees the writing on the wall that these Republican senators probably are going to confirm him. We saw with Pete Hegseth that there were issues with his character and coming into question, and Republican senators, a majority of them still chose to confirm him. And so I think she sees that this is a last-ditch effort for her to go out there and kind of say her piece, because I think when he was running for president, she knew it was a long shot. She knew that he probably wasn't going to get anywhere with his presidential run, and so it wouldn't be that he would be in a position of power. But now she sees that it's very real that he could be confirmed as the head of HHS.
Nicole Shanahan was his running mate when he was running to be president. She is the former wife of the founder of Google. She has a lot of money and has used that for political purposes. I mean, not only for their race, but also for to defeat senators in key races in the U.S. She just put out a video a few moments ago basically warning anyone who is considering voting against RFK Jr.
Please know I will be watching your votes very closely. While Bobby may be willing to play nice, I won't. If you vote against him, I will personally fund challengers to primary you in your next election, and I will enlist hundreds of thousands to join me.
How do Republican senators hear something like, any senators hear something like that?
I think Republican senators aren't necessarily worried about Nicole Shanahan. I think they're much more worried about the MAGA Inc. that has been very effective at playing an outside-in game and supporting the president's nominees. I agree with Maria. It's searing. It's scathing. But what we heard today from Kaitlan Kennedy is late, and it's very personal. When we were just here the other night, you were interviewing Rahm Emanuel. Rahm Emanuel said, forget about the personal, make it about the substance. And this is very personal in a way that I think gets lost on a lot of folks out there and isn't going to really generate the sort of grassroots like voices of people calling in Democrat senators. And here's the other thing. Democratic senators aren't necessarily going to be the ones that need to be swung here. You know, there's a group of maybe Republican voters that you could peel, Republican senators that you could peel off. And I don't think anything that Kaitlan Kennedy said today is going to change that right now.
He's going in front of the Senate Finance Committee tomorrow. Then he's got to go in front of the Senate Health Committee, which is chaired by a doctor, I should note, who is a Republican. But I mean, on the substance issues beyond, talking about putting animals in a blender for people to watch to feed his hawks, I mean, there are going to be questions that we've even heard from Senate Republicans privately that they have.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're going to really tell how much the worry is within the Republican senators in terms of, is it going to go to the threshold of them voting against RFK Jr.? I mean, we've already seen that the appetite for going up against Donald Trump is not big within Republicans, right? Now, I'm going to be interested to see what Senator McConnell does, right, on this whole vaccination thing. I think he's going to be somebody. He voted against Hegseth. Good for him. I think he's found his fine. He's not running for re-election, so he's not really, beholden to anyone. I think he could be one of the ones that votes against him. But they have to get 3 more, right?
Yeah.
And that's not going to be an easy feat.
They certainly do. And I think obviously the vaccination is one big issue, too. But also something that's been really striking to me is how pro-abortion he is, and how there has not been a lot of talk about that. Not a lot of pushback from Republicans or these grassroots organizations. I mean, you saw from Mike Pence's group, they came out against him, which I thought I agreed with, because look, Trump is someone who champions on being the most pro-life president ever, and then we're putting up a nominee for HHS, someone who was, for most of his career, supportive of abortion up until the 9-month mark. So it's things like that where I also have issues with his candidacy. I mean, even just all the conspiracies he spread about COVID. He said that Ashkenazi Jews and the Chinese were the most immune. So I hope that those are questions that get brought up at the hearings as well.
I assume they will be. We will be watching starting tomorrow morning. Many more hearings to come. Thank you, everybody.